The alarm inside my own skull goes off before the first student even sits down. That is how I know something is wrong today. In 300 years, I have never once felt fear before an exam has begun. Yet here it is, coiling in whatever passes for my stomach, because I already know who is walking through that door. My name does not matter to you. What matters is what I am. I am the reason no student at Thren Academy has successfully cheated on a final exam in over 3 centuries. I sit at the front of the great stone hall, carved into the dais like an old statue that happens to breathe, and when the exam begins, I reach into every mind in the room. I feel the shape of every thought. I know guilt the way you know the smell of smoke before you see the fire. I have never been wrong, not once. Until today, when a girl named Maya Whitfield walks in and sits in the back corner, and I feel the floor of my confidence begin to crack. Let me back up, because you deserve to understand what is coming. The exam hall fills quickly. 200 students from a dozen different worlds take their seats, their thoughts humming around me like static before a storm. I do not need to try. I simply listen, the way you might hear a room full of whispers without focusing on any single voice. Most minds are easy to read. A Dravani cadet 3 rows from the front has already scratched tiny formulas into the inside of his own arm, hidden under a long sleeve, thinking he is clever. I feel his guilt spike the moment his stylus touches the exam paper. It flickers like a lit match in a dark room, bright and impossible to miss. A pair of Solari twins near the middle try something bolder. They attempt to share answers between their linked minds, silently passing numbers back and forth like coins under a table. They forget, or perhaps never knew, that I can hear a telepathic conversation as easily as I can hear a shout. I catch them within the first 2 minutes. Then there is a young Keth student near the window, sweating, glancing sideways at his neighbor's exam sheet, his intention to cheat blooming in his mind like a bruise before he has even done anything wrong. I flag the intention early enough to stop the act itself. This is what I do. This is what I have always done, and I do it without strain, the way you breathe without thinking about your lungs. 3 catches in the first 20 minutes. An easy morning. I expect nothing else to challenge me. Then I turn my attention to the back corner, where Maya Whitfield sits with her exam sheet in front of her, and I reach into her mind the way I have reached into 200 years of minds before hers. What I find there stops me cold. There is no single stream of thought. There are dozens, all running together, none of them waiting for the others to finish. She is solving the 3rd problem on the exam, an equation about orbital mechanics, and she is solving it correctly, step by careful step. But underneath that, uninvited and endless, a song is playing on a loop inside her head, some tune I do not recognize, repeating a few lines over and over without any reason I can find. Beneath that, a memory surfaces, unrelated and strange, about an argument she had with a friend 2 days ago over something as small as a borrowed jacket. Beneath that, a flicker of worry about whether she left a window open in her dormitory. Beneath that, something that might be embarrassment about the way her hair is falling across her face. All of this happens at once, while she writes a correct equation with a steady hand. I have read minds with 4 brains working in parallel. I have read minds shattering under fear, minds lying so hard they nearly broke themselves apart trying to hold the lie steady. In every single case, that kind of noise, that overlapping crowd of thoughts, is the signature of deception. It is what guilt looks like when a mind tries to hide something important behind something else. The lie sits on top, dressed up to look calm, while the truth hides underneath, straining and desperate. So I search for the seam. I search for the place where her calm surface answer separates from whatever she is really thinking, the way I have separated truth from lie in every mind I have ever touched. I dig deeper, the way I always do, expecting to find a hidden thread of guilt buried under the noise. There is no seam. There is no calm version of her hiding underneath the chaos. The chaos is not a performance. The chaos, as far as I can tell, is simply what her mind looks like when it is doing nothing wrong at all. I stay in her thoughts longer than I ever have with any student, nearly 4 full minutes, which for a mind like mine is an eternity. I grow less certain with every passing second. I have never been less certain of anything. By the time she sets down her stylus, 9 minutes before the exam ends, I still have not found a single trace of guilt. Her answers, when I glance through them using nothing more than ordinary sight, are correct, original, clearly her own work. And yet I cannot say, with the certainty I have always had, that she did not cheat. Because for the first time in 300 years, I do not know what cheating would even look like in a mind built the way hers is built. I do not flag her. I tell myself, this is simply an unusual case. A strange mind from a strange species, nothing more. I have read minds, and I have read gods. Surely, I can understand one human girl. I am wrong about that too, though I do not know it yet. The exam ends, students file out, some relieved, some anxious about their scores. The usual noise of an ending test. Maya Whitfield walks past the dais without looking at me, her bag slung over one shoulder, already humming that same tune under her breath, the one that had been looping in her mind for the entire exam. I watch her go, and feel something I have never felt before in this hall. Not defeat. Not exactly. Something closer to curiosity mixed with unease, like standing at the edge of water you cannot see the bottom of. The headmaster, an old and sharp-eyed woman named Eleanor Bramwell, comes to speak with me after the hall empties. She has run this academy for 40 years and trusts my judgment completely. She has never had reason not to. She asks me for my report. I tell her about the Dravani cadet, the Solari twins, the nervous Keth student. She nods, satisfied, already planning the usual consequences. Then she asks if there was anyone else. I hesitate. I have never hesitated with her before. I tell her about Maya, I tell her what I found, and more importantly, what I did not find. Eleanor listens carefully, her expression unreadable, and when I finish, she asks a simple question. Did the girl cheat or not? I tell her the truth. I do not know. Eleanor is quiet for a long moment. Then she tells me something I did not expect. Maya Whitfield is not an ordinary exchange student. She was placed at this academy as part of a wider study, one Eleanor herself only recently learned the full details of. Human minds, it seems, have been giving certain telepathic and mind-reading species trouble across several systems, not because humans are skilled at deception, but because their minds simply do not work the way most species assume a mind should work. Scientists and scholars across a dozen worlds have been quietly trying to understand why creatures like me, built specifically to detect dishonesty, seem to struggle whenever a human mind is involved. I ask Eleanor why no one told me this before the exam. She admits, with something close to an apology, that no one was certain it would matter. Most human students who have passed through partner academies caused no trouble at all. Maya was expected to be the same. Ordinary, unremarkable. And by every measure that matters, grades, behavior, effort, she has been exactly that. The only unusual thing about her is the shape of her mind itself, and until today, no one thought to test what that shape would do to a creature like me. I find this both troubling and, strangely, exciting. In 3 centuries, nothing has ever surprised me the way this has. I decide, without telling Eleanor at first, that I want to understand Maya Whitfield properly. Not to catch her doing something wrong. There is no evidence she has ever done anything wrong. I want to understand why her mind is built the way it is, why it can hold a dozen unrelated thoughts at once, and still solve a difficult equation without dropping a single thread. Over the following weeks, I begin paying closer attention during ordinary classes, not exams, simply observing the way her mind moves. I learn that this constant layering of thought is not something she controls. It happens whether she is solving a problem, reading a book, or simply sitting quietly at lunch. A memory will surface uninvited. A song will loop for hours without her choosing it. A worry about something small and distant will crowd in beside a thought about something large and important, and her mind treats them, as far as I can tell, with nearly equal weight. At first this seems like chaos, plain and simple. But the more I watch, the more I begin to notice something else underneath the noise. Despite all of it, despite the constant crowding of unrelated thought, she never once loses track of what actually matters. She finishes her assignments on time. She helps a struggling classmate named Oliver Grant understand a difficult concept in mechanics, patiently, without irritation, even while I can feel 3 other thoughts running through her mind at the same moment. She remembers a promise she made to a friend, named Priya Deshmukh, about meeting for a meal, and she keeps it exactly on time, despite the tangle of thought I know is happening inside her the entire day. It occurs to me, slowly, that what I first mistook for chaos might actually be a kind of strength I have never encountered before. Every other species I have read treats their mind like a single narrow road, one thought following the next in careful order. When something interrupts that order, it usually means something has gone wrong, either through fear, deception, or breakdown. Human minds, or at least this human mind, seem to treat thought less like a single road and more like an open field, with many paths running at once, none of them blocking the others. It should not work, and yet it clearly does. Weeks pass. Another exam approaches, this one larger and more important, a final test that will determine whether several students advance to the Academy's highest levels of study. Maya is among them. So is the Dravani cadet I caught earlier in the term, now much more careful, and several others whose minds I know well by this point. On the day of the exam, I feel that same old fear return, sharper this time, because I know I will face her mind again, and I still do not have an answer for what I found the first time. The exam begins. I move through the room the way I always do, catching small attempts at dishonesty here and there. Nothing as bold as before, since word has clearly spread about how sharp my attention can be. A student named Felix Owusu tries to hide a small note under his sleeve, and I catch the guilt in his mind within seconds. Bright and unmistakable, just like always. It is almost comforting, this return to the familiar. Then I reach Maya again. The same layered chaos greets me, immediate and overwhelming. The song is different this time, but the pattern is the same, a tune looping quietly beneath everything else she is thinking. Beneath that, worry about a message she has not yet answered from her mother back on Earth. Beneath that, a flicker of hunger, since she skipped breakfast. Beneath that, the steady, careful work of solving the exam itself, correct step following correct step, calm and sure, despite everything happening around it. This time, though, I do not panic. I have spent weeks learning the shape of her mind, and though I still cannot claim to fully understand it, I recognize it now, the way you might recognize a difficult piece of music you have heard many times, without ever being able to play it yourself. I know this is simply how she thinks. I know, with a confidence built not on reading guilt, but on weeks of careful observation, that there is no hidden lie buried beneath the noise. There never was. I do not flag her, but this time, it is not because I am uncertain. It is because I finally understand enough to be certain in a different way. She is not hiding anything. She is simply thinking the way she always thinks, loudly and messily and honestly, all at once. The exam ends. Maya passes with strong marks, as do most of the students I did not catch cheating. Eleanor meets with me again afterward, curious to hear whether the second exam went any differently than the first. I tell her what I have learned. I explain that Maya's mind is not a puzzle to be solved so much as a different kind of instrument entirely, one that plays many notes at once instead of one note at a time. I tell her that I no longer believe I am unable to read human minds. I believe, instead, that I have simply never needed to learn a new way of listening until now, and that the process of learning it took time, patience, and a willingness to admit that even a creature as old and as certain as myself can still be wrong about how a mind is supposed to work. Eleanor seems satisfied with this answer, though I can tell she is already thinking ahead to what this might mean for the wider study she mentioned, the one involving human minds across several systems. She thanks me and leaves, and the hall grows quiet again, the way it always does after an exam ends. I find myself thinking, in the stillness that follows, about the very first day Maya Whitfield sat in that back corner, about the fear I felt before I even understood why I was afraid. I think about how close I came to distrusting her, simply because her mind did not match the shape I expected minds to take. I think about how easily that distrust could have caused real harm if I had acted on my first instinct instead of taking the time to actually understand what I was seeing. There is a lesson in that, I think, though I am still turning it over even now. For 300 years, I built my entire sense of certainty on the idea that a crowded, chaotic mind must be hiding something. I was right about that, for every species I had ever encountered before. But being right for 300 years does not mean being right forever. Maya's mind taught me that noise is not always deception. Sometimes it is simply how a person survives, how they solve one problem while carrying a dozen others at the same time, and somehow still manage to hold everything together without dropping a single piece. I think about all the human students who might come through this academy after her, and I wonder how many other creatures like me, built to catch dishonesty in minds that are supposed to behave in predictable ways, will make the same mistake I nearly made. I decide, quietly, that I will not let that happen again, at least not here. I begin preparing notes of my own, something Eleanor did not ask for but will likely find useful, explaining what I have learned about the shape of a human mind, so that whoever studies this after me will not need 300 years of certainty shattered before they understand what I now understand. Months later, near the end of the academic year, Maya Whitfield graduates near the top of her class. Her mind, as far as I can tell, exactly as loud and layered and honest as it was the very first day I read it. I watch her walk across the stage to receive her certificate, humming some new tune under her breath that only she can hear, 3 or 4 other thoughts trailing along behind it, like ribbons caught in wind. Oliver Grant claps loudly for her from the crowd, and Priya Deshmukh waves from somewhere near the front. Maya smiles at both of them, distracted for a moment by a memory of something entirely unrelated, and then returns her attention to the stage without missing a step. I realize, watching her leave the hall for the last time, that I never did fully catch her, not because she outsmarted me, and not because she hid anything cleverly. I never caught her, because there was never anything to catch. What I found instead was something far more interesting than a lie. I found a different way of being honest, one built from many voices speaking at once, instead of one voice speaking alone, and it took me 300 years of near-perfect certainty to learn that difference actually exists. I remain here, at the front of the exam hall, coiled around the same old dais, listening to the same kinds of minds pass through, year after year. I still catch every cheater who tries their luck against me. The Dravani cadets still hide notes under their sleeves. The Solari twins still try to share answers when they think no one is listening closely enough. I catch them all, just as I always have. But now, whenever a new student walks in whose mind feels unfamiliar, whose thoughts do not sit neatly in the shape I expect, I remind myself of the lesson Maya Whitfield taught me without ever knowing she was teaching it. Strange does not always mean guilty. Loud does not always mean false. Sometimes a mind simply carries more than I am used to seeing carried, and the only honest thing to do, the only fair thing to do, is take the time to actually listen before deciding what I think I already know. I have 300 more years ahead of me in this hall, at least. I find, to my own quiet surprise, that I am looking forward to whatever strange, unfamiliar mind walks through that door next. I no longer assume I already understand it before it sits down. That, I think, might be the most honest thing I have learned in 3 centuries of catching liars. Understanding takes patience, even for a creature built entirely to know the truth at a glance. And sometimes the most important truth is simply admitting that you were wrong about someone, and being grateful you took the time to find out.